All right, here we go. We're going to go ahead and start talking about the Middle Colonies. I love talking about the Southern Colonies, and I love talking about the New England Colonies. The Middle Colonies are definitely important, but they don't have kind of the juicy history of the other two areas, so you'll notice I'm going to go through these pretty fast just to make sure you have the basics down. And if you find any really cool, fun stories about the Middle Colonies and you want to share them with me, please let me know. So, the Middle Colonies. What makes the Middle Colonies actually a really interesting region is that it's by far the most diverse. This is the first place where we have Quakers. It's the first place where we have Jewish immigrants. There's Dutch, there's German, there's English. There's a lot of different people who are settling in the Middle Colonies. And what's also impressive for the time period is they're kind of making it work, all being different from one another, which today sounds obvious, but at the time was a bit radical. So if you look at the map here, we've got New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware. These are our Middle Colonies. And there's a mix of reasons that people are there. Some are seeking religious freedom. Some are looking to start businesses. It just depends on what country they were coming from. But they're primarily living in small communities, independent ones, some cities, some rural, but still very independent, highly organized communities. So, the economy. There are a lot of different, because this is such a different region, it's not only diverse in people, it's diverse in landscape, and it's diverse in economic resources. So, there's a lot of important cities. Philadelphia, New York, these become really essential trading centers. There's a lot of shipbuilding taking place. Small farming, Pennsylvania in particular, becomes a really critical wheat growing state. And artisans who are making things like furniture, clothing, lots of household items, and they're selling those items in New England and in the South, and they're exporting them overseas. So when you think about the Middle Colonies, you want to think about trade. New York, also known as New Netherlands, was founded by the Dutch in 1623. Now, it was technically sold by the Manhattan Indian tribe to the Dutch. That's not really what happened. There was kind of a tricky contract, and it was really just taken from them. But it's all surrounded on the Hudson River. That's the entrance and the exit from New Netherlands. Now, this was not founded with any kind of religious purpose. This was solely founded as an economic enterprise. The Dutch are notorious for their entrepreneurship. Dutch businessmen came to New York, they established an organized city, they established an import and export center, and they were moving goods from the colonies to Europe very successfully. Now, we call the people who did this patroons. Think about this. In Jamestown, we had a name for these very same people. Who were they? If you said Cavaliers, you are correct. So, if you're living in New Amsterdam, which is New York City, and of course New Netherlands is New York State. They didn't have a state at the time, but you get what I mean. People are mostly agnostic. It's a non-religious community, with the exception of a pretty considerable settlement of European Jews who came there to escape persecution. There's also Huguenots, if you remember from studying the Reformation, who fled from France and moved to New York. And by 1640, so not even 20 years later, there's 18 different languages being spoken in what's now New York City. So if you think about New York City today being so diverse, there's so many people, there's so much going on, it has been like that from the very, very beginning. Now, the New York colony, or the New Amsterdam colony, was extremely peaceful and well organized. It was a well-oiled machine until, as always seems to happen in world history, the English decide that they want it. And somehow that's enough. So 1664, King Charles II of England, who you might remember as being the Restoration King, decides that he believes that land should belong to England, and he wants to put the land under the care of the Duke of York. So this is where New York gets its name. Now the English, he sends a number of ships in the English Navy to New York, threatens the Dutch, tells them they'll put up a fight if they don't get out. And at that time, Governor Stuyvesant is in charge of New Amsterdam, and he says, you know what? Fine, that's fine. If we can keep our businesses here, you can be in charge of it. Because really the whole point was just to establish new businesses. So New Amsterdam becomes New York, the state of New Netherland becomes New York, and it becomes an English colony. Pennsylvania is also one of the larger middle colonies. And Pennsylvania is very, very different from New York because it is founded for religious reasons. Now, there's a small group of Protestants called Quakers, or the Society of Friends, who were an extremely peaceful, very kind of not reclusive, but independent group of people who were being persecuted in England for their difference in religious beliefs. And a leading Quaker named William Penn receives a land grant, and he goes to Pennsylvania to establish this safe haven for the Quakers. And Penn was referred to as America's first madman. If you are familiar with the term Madison Avenue Men, he's the first really big American advertiser. He writes these super appealing ads trying to convince people to come and live in Pennsylvania, and it works really well. So the city of Philadelphia is officially founded in 1681. It's the center of this Quaker area in Pennsylvania. It's really the center of life, of trade, of culture there. And even though there are Native Americans who are living in Pennsylvania, Penn, being a Quaker, and they are by nature very peaceful, did not instigate conflict with Native American tribes. William Penn, as successful as he was at growing the Pennsylvania colony, was not very popular among other people who were helping to lead the Pennsylvania colony. He was very good friends with King James II, who you might remember as being overthrown by William and Mary, and that kind of put him on the wrong side of history in the minds of a lot of other people who were leading Pennsylvania. And also, in his attempt to make this haven, this new place to provide religious recluse for Quakers. Sorry, my dogs are running around, moving all of my firewood. He actually racks up a whole lot of debt in building that colony, and he's put in prison for some period of time to pay off that debt, which, of course, if you're in prison, you can't pay off debt. That's called debtor's prison. It's a terrible system. We'll talk about that another day. A little bit about the Quakers, who are the much longer-lasting legacy after William Penn dies. Quakers are pacifists. They do not believe in warfare. They are eligible for religious exemption from, they can be exempt from combat roles in war. That still stands today. They often enforced what we call blue laws, laws that ban things like drinking, dancing, certain kinds of language, really behavior modification laws that are today still part of a lot of our legal system. They were excellent city planners, really wise traders, and also tolerant of other religious groups. New Jersey and Delaware are much smaller neighbors to the southeast in the Middle Colonies. You had to go through New Jersey to get into Pennsylvania, which is really what New Jersey was known for at the time. And in fact, the area was governed by Pennsylvania until after the Revolution. All right, so this is a little writing prompt I'm going to ask you to do. Feel free to go online, learn more. You missed a couple of the video clips because just in the interest of time, we're going to make these presentations short. But if you want to learn any more, I'd like you to get that information. And then in 6 or more complete, developed sentences, tell me if you had to immigrate from England to one of the Middle Colonies, which would you choose and why?